Welcome to the Money and Time Machine podcast, where you can learn how to rage against the theft of your financial future by listening to a unique perspective on what's holding you back from a life of more money and more time.
Hello and welcome to the Money and Time Machine podcast. I'm your host, Justin Paul. Welcome to episode 144. The trick to money is having some. We have become lost as a people, and I'm making that as a general observation. The world has changed so much that from a financial engineering perspective, we can barely recognize ourselves. Our parents had what seemed like archaic ideas around money, and we seemed to have had our heads in the clouds dreaming about a future our forebears couldn't have imagined. That we knew better and could do better, well, I imagine our parents rolling their eyes at us and at the crazy notions we espoused as young people. No arguments from me, but I would ask the question, at what costs? At what cost did we sell our souls for that dream life? And when we look back and reflect and ask the question, was it really worth it? To transcend from the age of our parents and grandparents to our present day experiences was meant to be an improvement. That's how life works, generally speaking. And on the surface, it may, and in fact does appear to be so. But to transform from the life conditions of our parents and grandparents was to transcend to something more fulfilling. And to make good on what we were taught meant, supposedly, to transcend and include. To include the valuable lifelong lessons of the past and make good on the opportunities that the future invariably always has to offer. But today, when we analyze the financial and fiscal health of the masses, the overall diagnosis is that we are a nation of indebted people, enjoying the life they have yet to pay for with money they have yet to earn. So today, I thought we might go back and retrieve a lesson that many, even in today's more advanced economy, could do with revisiting. To help with this conversation, and she'll be doing most of the talking, I assure you, my advice to you is that you should listen carefully. She has a strong accent originating from Las Vegas. She met her Australian husband in England, and together they settled in Brisbane, affectionately known as Bris Vegas. What an irony, where they raised a beautiful family and achieved a level of financial independence many will be envious of. But she's here today to tell you that you too can have and achieve the same result that she has been blessed with. So welcome to the Money and Time Machine podcast, a lady who enjoys the ideas of money and time as much as I do, Sherri Dumbrell from Essential Spending Planner. Welcome, Cherie.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Justin.
My pleasure. Look, yes, thank you. I felt I couldn't do with a standard intro. And look, you and I met 2 weeks ago. I think you came across me on an interview. You got in touch with me, and I was quite intrigued by what you did. So much so that I almost feel aghast that I didn't record our last conversation. That was just a catch up because it was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. So my hope today is that we're going to touch on a few of those elements. And for the record, I think I've already mentioned this to you. We've probably got one or two or three more podcast interviews just based on the idea that you had alone. So I couldn't possibly do you justice by shoveling everything into the next 30 minutes to an hour, however long it is. But I guess what we're going to talk about today, Cherie, I can sum it up in something that you touched on when last we spoke, which is comforting lies and uncomfortable truths. You essentially developed Essential Spending Planner, but what I love about what you do is this notion that you love spending money, and that spending money should be a joy. So that spin alone on what you do, it hooked me. It hooked me. So please, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell the audience what it is you do.
Okay. So yes, I'm Sherri Dumbrell. I live in North Brisbane. I've been here, it will go 33 years in January. My husband's Australian. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 27 years of those. And so we have 5 children. My youngest is almost 20. And so I became really good at managing time and managing money. Because as you know, as you can hear, I grew up in the States. I grew up mainly in San Diego, but my family all live up in the mountains in Utah. So my desire was to go home and visit my family. And so I had to be really good with money with just the one income. And it was just a moderate income so that I could go and visit my family and have the needs for our children. So that's what I did. And then I've just had my business, Essential Spending Planner, for 4 years now. And basically, it's a way for me to give back to the community or the village that helped me raise my children, because any parent knows you don't do it alone. And one of the biggest stresses that I see and that I saw as I was parenting, and you never stop parenting, is the stress of money on families.
Yes.
And on couples. And so that's why I do what I do, because I found this system 19 years ago. And that's when I stopped budgeting, because I was an avid budgeter up until then. And it did okay. I paid my bills most of the time because the budgeting does a lot of guessing and says it's possible to pay your bills. It does not show you how, and that you have 100% clarity that you will be able to pay that bill when that bill arrives. And so I went on search after our family had went to the States. We had 5 young children. The oldest was 12. We went to the States for a month and thought, there has to be a better way to manage money than budgeting, because I want to save more and do this more. And so that's when I went in search and found what was originally Simply Budgets. And I started doing that, and it dramatically changed our family's finances. We didn't bring in more money. We just learned how to better manage our money, and a system and this great tool that actually works and tells us your money truth. So that's what I loved about it. It told our family our money truth. As long as we were honest with our money truth, which with math, there's one answer. With finances, there's one answer. So you can be 100% honest in your financial dealings. And so that's basically the things I teach people is, one, you have to know your truth, and you have to be honest with yourself, with your partner, with your children, with your peers, and not a peer that let them think that you have more money than you do, just to impress them. Honesty is really that's the key to success with your money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that the money truths. And in fact, I took those 2 words down when I last spoke with you, because there seems to be this incongruence between this notion of money truth versus society's social agreements, the unspoken social agreements, which somehow makes it okay to spend money that you don't have on things you don't need. Is that fundamentally where you see our biggest challenge is?
Yes. It's interesting, because when I talk to youth. I love teaching youth, ones that are just out of high school, because none of them are being taught money in school, just like we weren't taught money in school.
Yeah.
And so I teach them what their money truth is, what their potential with their money is, because they're just being taught what their parents taught them, which they didn't. They're kind of fumbling as well.
Yes.
And so, so it's just, you have to know your money truth, but you have to have a reliable source. And consumerism, when I say to people, do you know what consumerism is? And some of them say, no, what's that?
Yeah.
And so I have to explain, you are part of consumerism. That's a big marketing thing. And they are trying to sell you everything you need and everything you don't need when you have the money and when you don't have the money. They don't care. Their goal is get money, 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 money. And so you can fall into the trap of believing a lot of the marketing. You deserve this.
Yes.
Get it now. When I was on the way to the airport one time, huge billboard said, spend now, save later or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And I was like, no, wrong way around.
Yes.
But that's what we're being fed. We're being fed that if you want something, you deserve it.
Yeah.
And you can get it. And then just worry about it later, how you're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
And so that's been a really big disservice
Yeah.
with consumerism. And we have to be smart. And so I teach people all those games, all those head games, like my daughter, when she used to go through McDonald's, I'd like a hamburger. Would you like fries with that?
Yes.
I had to tell her about upselling.
Yeah.
And so she came home, Mom, they wanted to sell me fries. And I told them, no, thank you. I just want the hamburger. And so it's all those things that they're trying to get you to buy when you didn't need them in the first place, or you couldn't even afford them. And so, so that's a big thing, is getting rid of all those myths and breaking through all the lies and getting to the money truth.
Yes. And I guess, look, and I'm stating the obvious, it must be incredibly challenging because the system we live in doesn't want you to be self-sufficient. We are a system mired in debt. The solution is more debt. From a social engineering perspective, it makes sense to engineer the masses, the populace, the communities into spending money they don't have for things they don't need, as I mentioned. So what's more challenging? The question is, what should be easier? Teaching younger kids, which is a challenge because our education system doesn't, it goes against the grain, versus adults. Is it a case of you sometimes have to let people fall and hit rock bottom before they actually come to their own realization? Is that been your observation?
Not necessarily. I mean, my ideal person that I like to mentor is someone who's good with money, but there's a limitation in traditional budgets. It only is two-dimensional, which is income and expenses, and it focuses more on the income. And my ideal one that I love to work is 17 or even as young as 14 and 9 months when they can start working here in Australia. As soon as they get a job, they need a spending plan.
Yes.
And they need to be educated and get that financial literacy that they're not getting in school. I was at a business expo last year, and I was standing in line, and the person in front of me was about 14 years old with his mom, and they asked him, "Oh, do you have a business?" He said, "Oh, yeah." His business was teaching his peers about finances.
Yes, I recall you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, he knew he wasn't being taught in school. So he was actually creating a business at 14 years old to teach his peers about financial literacy.
Wow.
And so, that's the age I'm really passionate about teaching is, that once they get a job to the age 25, where hopefully they don't have too much debt yet, and educate them before they get into that debt trap.
Yes.
But then, of course, there's a lot of people who have gotten into that debt trap, and they find it so refreshing to work with me, and I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to tell them all those consumer lies. And then when it proves to them, when they say, yes, I had this account and they gave me this credit, and then when I finished paying it off, they said, well, now you can spend it again. And they said, and I told them, no, thank you. I'm cutting this card up. Yeah. And so when they did that, they were so excited because they finally learned the game.
Yes.
And they learned that they are the only ones that should control their finances, and they need to follow their money truths.
No, absolutely. I mean, the Money and Time Machine podcast is really all about social and financial engineering, understanding how the game is played, how you are manipulated psychologically, emotionally, from a very young age, and it's everywhere. And then we wonder why it is we can't seem to get ahead. Now, I love the fact that you mentioned a budget, because budget's not a very pleasant word. It conjures up all sorts of images, and most of it is not pleasant. But it would be fair to say that the thing I love about you is that you encourage people to enjoy money, but you can't enjoy something without exercising some form of discipline. Am I on the money there, Cherie?
Yes, or a plan. You have to plan anything in life. And I'm a big believer. I love to create memories in my life. When I was a young child, I saw other families having fun things and doing fun things. when I became, and I thought, I'm going to be like that. And then I became a mother and realized nothing happens unless you plan and organize it.
Yes.
So it's the same with your spending. If you want something, you need to plan it, save for it, and then happily spend.
Yes.
And so there is that planning and knowing what you want so that you strategically know you're going to spend your money on what you really want and not on what you just think you want, that impulsive stuff. The spending planner helps you save that very easily so that when you do spend, you're a happy spender. I am a happy spender, and my following are called happy spenders.
Yes.
Because when I spend, I happily spend, no guilt, no regrets, because I know I have the money there, and I'm actually a better spender because I planned and saved for it. So I'm going to be quite smart in how I'm going to spend that money.
I'm with you, and as part of the part of your program, I think one of the greatest misconceptions, we live in an era, in an age where it's almost though the top 3%ers, the 1%ers, the 2%ers, those are the lifestyles that get shoveled down our throats through all the various mediums. But would you agree with the notion that you don't actually need a lot of money to thrive and live well?
Oh, definitely. And didn't we find that for many families, they found that in 2020?
Yes.
You know, a lot of my clients, their wages decreased dramatically. Yet, were they happy? Yeah, they were. They had more family time. They realized what they could live on less. So when, you know, the employment or the job came back, they were able to rethink all their spending because they realized, wow, I could live on a lot less, which means that when I do get more, I can put that money towards something I really want rather than having that just, you know, eat up in what we think we want.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go back to yourself, Cherie. I think what I love about it, what you do, one, you've got a passion for money and time as much as I do. But what the thing that I find most authentic about you is that you live the walk and the talk that you espouse. Now, give us some sort of insight, because you shared with me when last we spoke that you've got 5 kids. You know, I know people today that are struggling just with having 1, let alone 5. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you paid your mortgage off in 15 years. So, you know, let's be honest, that alone makes you the envy of the vast majority of mortgage holders in Australia, you know. So give me a sense of your journey when you started, some of the challenges, how you overcame that, and then eventually, you know, how you, because you obviously had this business idea for quite a while, but then at some point you decided, listen, the world needs this, and you turned this into a business.
Yes. Okay. So when I was a teenager, I was just like every other typical teenager where I spent every cent of my paycheck. So I was, as a lot of families live, paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
I remember getting back, this is back in the day, we didn't have mobile phones. We had the family phone up on the wall and I had, I wanted my own phone in my own room. I was paying $80 a month for that line. And I look back now and thinking, I wouldn't even pay $80 a month for my mobile, let alone that was 40 years ago. And so I wasn't the greatest with money. And then I married my Aussie husband. And I came into the marriage with $500 debt, and just, you know, but he was really good with money, did that cash envelope system. And plus, because I did want to go home, I had to do better. And so I did. I became I was a record keeper. I used Microsoft Money, which was back then, and I entered in everything we spent. I planned everything. And most of the time it worked okay. My bills, sometimes there wasn't enough in that account because it can only guess budgeting. But and so I just found that we were just basically living paycheck to paycheck. We had this mortgage, but we weren't really, you know, we were just kind of paying our basic and then enjoying. And so that's when I thought something has to change. And after our trip to the States, and I thought I want to do more of that, there has to be a better system. And so that's when I went in search and found the spending plan system. And that introduced that third missing element of timing of your income and timing your expenses. And that made all the difference and really showed me our money truth. And so that was great. We were able to pay off our home in 15 years because it gave me 100% clarity. It showed me the actual day I will have that paid off. In fact, one of the people I helped, she contacted me. I've been working, she's had hers for about 2 years. And she called me and she said, someone's wanting to sell me a $10,000 package to coach me to tell me that I can have my debts paid off in 10 years. She goes, but I think the spending plan system does that. And I said, yeah, it does. You're paying $10 a month for the online subscription. And I showed her and she goes, yeah. I said, so no, you don't need to pay someone $10,000 to tell you or coach you through paying off your mortgage in the day you'll be paid off. The spending plan does that. And so it gives you clear dates. So if you do have debt, usually when people have debt, they just think they're always going to be in debt.
Yes.
If you're given a day, and then if you're even told, hey, if you put even $10 more in, then it's going to be 6 months or a year sooner, that motivates you to gives you that full clarity of your financial situation. And so, so I wasn't always great with money, but you do have to have a reason why you want to be better with money. What is your why? Why is it because you have really bad health? Because health is a consequence sometimes of money stress. It could be, discord with your partner. It could be you just want to go on that holiday and you can't. You have to have an important reason why you want to be better with your money, because that you need to keep your eye on that goal. That's going to keep you there. But once you start putting things in the spending plan system, it's going to convert you within the first session or two. You're going to see it and you're going to see your truth. And that is going to change mindset more and faster than any study of mindset or behavior. When you know your truth, it's like you went from blind and you can see again. And you say, whoa, and you see what your possibilities are.
Absolutely. And so in terms of, so a couple of takeaways I've got there, because I imagine, I'm 47, so I can go back to when I was a teeny tot, and, my parents were very disciplined. The idea of surplus debt, they've just found abhorrent, as many, sort of baby boomers would have found. Whereas today, isn't it interesting how the psychology has shifted? And you touched on it, that living in perpetual debt has now become the norm.
Yes. Yeah.
In one generation, it's become the norm. It's done a complete flip.
Yeah. I am not normal. And I teach people to be financially weird, because most people are financially normal. They have debt. They live paycheck to paycheck. They might have a little savings, or they might have no savings at all. And that is sadly socially acceptable.
Yes.
Where I choose to be financially weird. And even when I was young, and my other friends who had the same amount of kids, raising them, and they would be, taking them to fast food quite a few times because they were just maybe didn't have time or too lazy to cook a meal and go do that. And they thought that I was quite, wasn't living life.
Yes.
Because I was financially weird. Well, go 30 years later, they're envious of my weirdness.
Yeah.
Because, we don't have any financial stress. Once we got our spending plan, all financial stress left. And like I said, we did not increase the income. We just were more conscious on our expenses. And we had a tool that showed us exactly that you will be able to cover all your expenses in the next 12 months. Guaranteed, if you follow the plan, which is very simple.
And isn't it fascinating? And once again, I'm just touching on some of the things that you've mentioned there. We spoke about it a fortnight ago. Guilt and shame. Guilt and
Yes.
shame, these are, in my mind, lower order emotions. And we live in an era today where, keeping up with the Joneses. There are people that I know, I've met these people that live in homes that will never let you in the house because it's not furnished. They just maintain this facade, which is, and it's not a judgment, it's just a shame. But it seems to me that people are spending more money than they need on things they don't need, but living with the guilt and the shame post the purchase. It's almost as though people are buying, it's this addiction to ease this emotion that needs to be sated, but then are left with these lambasting emotions of guilt and shame post. Are you seeing that as well?
Yes. I mean, what has increased over the years that we hear all the time now, and it's the word mental health.
Yeah.
What has increased over the same years? Debt.
Yeah.
Is there any correlation between debt, the rising debt amount, and people's mental health? I don't know the figures, but I know they would be staggering.
Yeah.
I would hate to think how many of the suicides are connected with debt and just not feeling any way out of the hole. Because I've seen some of those, and I've helped them and tried to, because that can totally consume them physically. Physically, it can just totally eat you up and give you a lot of health conditions. Now, I'm not saying that if you have a health condition, it's because you're bad with money, but I'm just saying the stress of finances affects the soul as well as your body. When I work with someone, the first thing I say to them is not your fault that you have money problems.
Yeah.
And because you weren't educated. And I had this mother, they had like 3 kids. And I said to that, I didn't know who she was. And I just said, it's not your fault. Then I said, tell me your story. She starts to tell me their story. When she was young, it was her and her younger sister and her mother. Her mother was a drug addict and would use all their money on drugs and would ask her to go and steal food and shoplift so that they could feed themselves.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was so glad that I had told her it wasn't her fault. I told her 10 times, 100 times, it is not your fault because you didn't even have a loving parent who taught you, gave a good example of money. Yeah. So that's it. But yes, people do have shame and embarrassment, and that's what I want to break through. Yeah. I want to break through. I love having essential money talks. It's fun. You should enjoy talking about money, but most people don't. And most couples don't even go there because of the disunity and the blame and blaming the other person and everything about money. And so, we need to stop being embarrassed and shame. We need to get out. Whenever we have a problem in life, we go and ask someone for help.
Yes.
Yet it's sad because most people who have money problems, because of that shame and embarrassment, they don't ask for help. I am totally non-judgmental. I have made bad choices. We have all made bad choices.
Yes.
The thing that I focus on is the future.
Yeah.
And my whole system is based on planning your future spending. The past, quickly look back like you're looking back in a rearview mirror of your car. Just a quick look back in the past, but you want to look out that front windscreen to get to your destination. By looking in the past is not going to help. And so, I'm all for forgive yourself. It's okay. Yeah. Let's just move forward. And yes, keeping up with the Joneses, you're trying to impress them, yet you're sleeping with your debt every night and losing sleep.
Yeah.
So forget about the Joneses. And that was huge in the States, and still is huge in the States. And my US clients usually have so much more debt than my Australian clients, but yet the Australians are kind of improving their debt as well.
Yeah.
So it's all about knowing your money truth and being honest and keeping to that. And making sure that you're covering the most important life costs first before you go into your style costs. Because there are 2 types of costs. There's the ones that we all have that we need to sustain life. We need a roof over our head. We need food. we need a transport, and those basic things. Then there's the other things that we need. And when I'm saying the roof over the head, that's a modest home, one that is only 25 to 30% of your net pay coming home is all you should be putting out on that mortgage or that rent.
Yeah.
So there's percentages and things so that you have money to pay for your essentials, and you do that as little as possible. You also then have money to put away for what I call the big bad wolf account, because the big bad wolf, we know that story, came and visited those pigs, and the first two were not prepared. The third one was, because he had savings or he had prepared for that. And so we need to have money put aside for that. We need money put aside for replacing the things you buy. We buy things, but we tend to put our head in the sand like an ostrich and forget that we have to actually replace it as well as maintain it. And so, so I talk about all the 6 ways we spend our money.
Okay.
And, there's one of them is repairing the stuff you buy. One's buying the stuff, the other is repairing the stuff, and another one is replacing it. Yet we tend to put our head in the sand with the repairing and replacing. And that's when people easily, play the victim and put it on credit or get a loan because, for me, that happened, where really there is nothing unexpected in life.
Yeah.
Even death, we know is going to happen. We don't know when, but we know. So, it's all about being prepared. If you are prepared, you will not stress. And that's what I teach. I teach you to know your money truth in the future so that you can plan for it, so that when anything happens, no stress, because you already have a plan for that.
Absolutely. You look, my takeaway from what you mentioned there, and especially you alluded to earlier on in your answer, is that, one, you have to forgive yourself, because we live in a world where we are conditioned. I always tell people, you are not broken. You do not need fixing. So that's the first thing. You are not broken. And look, I've made every mistake that you've probably come across in your clients' list of not to do's. I've probably done that. And it's the reason why I created this podcast. One is, once you realize that you've been conditioned through societal's conditioning processes, you get these results, you get the frustration, you get the stress. But at some point, you say, look, enough's enough. Now that I know I'm not broken, now that I know that this is conditioning process, now I need to do the work. Okay, because now I can find examples like Sherri Dumbrell and thousands of others. Like, there's, I love that you're weird, there's normal and there's weird now, so there's thousands, if not thousands, of examples of people who are living well. And the distinction is, you now need, because we're all older now, so we can't blame mummy and daddy. We know what society is doing, is at least if you get to that perception anyway. And so now you've got to do the work. So when you created your business, was there a transition time between you living the life and improving your life and then deciding, I need to get this out to the masses?
Yes. Well, really, when I started, it was a CD, because back in 2003, that's when I
CDs,
found it was a CD you bought. So I bought the CD for $129, and I just worked off that.
Yes.
Okay. It was basically something thrown that you bought and you just had to figure it out yourself. There were a few little videos in there, but of course, I still had questions.
Yes.
And so I finally figured it out and worked with it. And then it wasn't until like 4 or 5 years ago that the one who created it, David Wright,
yes,
he said, hey, he knew that he was selling these CDs to people and they were still sitting on the box on their shelf.
Yeah.
And because he wants to make sure that he gives every dollar a job and make sure it's valued, he wanted to make sure that they knew how to use that. So, of course, CDs are gone. It's now all online subscriptions. And so he decided to train certified spending planners to help people initially set up their plan and to get in the habit of living their plan and giving them some accountability, because just because we're an adult doesn't mean we're going to follow the plan. And so that's what I do. And so as soon as that opportunity came, I was there, because for the past, at that point, 16 years before that, I was kind of telling all my friends and saying, hey, this is great.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I jumped on it, and I have helped so many people go from money stress to money success, or what I call financial peace.
Yes.
You know, because you hear the word financial freedom. People think that has to do with you have to do investing and risking things. No, it's financial peace is what I teach. I have 100% financial peace that all my bills will be paid in the next 12 months, because my plan tells me, it will tell me what my bank balances are for the next 12 months. And if I'm at any point going to be short, I know it now. And so, yeah, that's what I teach. And, I work one-on-one, and then I've also just started group coaching, which is being really successful. So you can learn with others and see that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And there is no shame, and there is no it's all about, yes, you have to be teachable and invest some time initially to set up your spending plan, like I did 19 years ago. And now it takes me, we get paid monthly, so I monitor it every month. It takes me about 10 minutes. That's it. It takes me very little time, because I gave myself emotional permission to spend some time and concentrate on setting up my finances on how I really want to spend every dollar. Yeah. And now I just follow that plan.
Absolutely.
And so, my favorite saying is, multiply your time and money by giving yourself emotional permission to invest time and money today for more time and money tomorrow. And that can go for anything in your life. Yes. You need to give yourself that permission to procrastinate everything on purpose. That's a positive thing, so that you can concentrate on things today that's going to give you so much more results without doing the work in the future.
Tell me, Cherie, I want your opinions on this. My mentor, Paul Council, he one of the many wise things that he sort of threw out is that you can't spend you can't spend your way to wealth. On the one hand, you got people that love to provide this image of success, but then I was always curious. Now, on the one hand, we talk about budgeting and the discipline and the joy of spending money, which is essentially living within your means. So I'll share with you a story. You've heard of Robert Kiyosaki?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, excellent.
Look, he's been around the globe. I first met Robert when I was 19 years of age. I was working at a bookstore, and his book, if you want to, I've got it here somewhere, but I can't remember. It'll come back to me in a second.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
No. It's one of his earlier ones. If you want to be rich and happy, don't go to school, I think it was. If you want to be rich and happy. So that was one of his earlier ones. Just took me a while to get into my brain. And Eloise Ford, who owned a down-to-earth bookstore in Perth, she sold his books on consignment, because at the time he was running the Money and You programs worldwide. He's a great Buckminster Fuller, student. And so, going forward at the time, I had no idea who he was, and I had no idea then that he would be, he would grow and develop into the businessman that he is today. But a few years ago, I was at a conference here in Perth, and listening to Robert speak, and we went on this break, and I introduced myself to this lady that seemed to be sitting there by herself, and we got chatting, and I asked her, look, how are you finding it? She says, oh, well, it is rather, interesting and intriguing. And then she said, but he's a bit blunt, isn't he? And I said, oh, how do you mean? And he says, well, saving is for losers. Was the comment? So she, one of the comments that he made. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, what did you take that to mean? And obviously she took it literally. And then I said, well, look, and I shared with her that I'd met Robert some years ago. And I explained to her in a very sort of layman's term that it actually doesn't mean what you think it means, And then I explained to her that I guess Robert being at that upper echelon, they think very differently to the ordinary everyday person. And so if you talk about things like savings, they also talk about things like inflation and the value of the dollar decreasing. So basically a dollar's worth less than it was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And then I could see the penny start to drop. And then as for the loser comment, I don't think he's meaning that as in a derogatory term, as in you are a loser. He's simply implying that on the money equation, if you choose to just continually save your money, and I recommend you save money, understand that you are on the losing end of the spectrum in that your money is just going to lose value. So unless you invest it in various mediums. And so look, she thanked me. She said, thank you. That sounds, I don't know why. And I said, listen, it's just a conversation piece. And, oh my God, he's rather blunt and he's calling me a loser. I said, no, he's, you've just interpreted that and at the level that you've interpreted that. So my question to you, Cherie, in the same way that you can't spend yourself to spend your way to wealth, you can't also save your way to wealth. So at some point, you've got to make that money work for you. Is there another tangent that you pursue with your clients in other directions, or people that are ready for that next level?
Yeah, before I actually started my business, I subcontracted with a property education company that were teaching people how to get their first investment property.
Okay.
Now, if they came to them, they didn't have their deposit, or most people don't have their own finances, personal finances organized first, which is number one. You need to have your own family finances organized before you even think about any of those big investments. And so then I would work with them, get their personal finances organized, make sure that they can afford, and then get their deposit so they can go on to that. So, yeah. And so, yeah, definitely. And, we have a finance investment property as well that we kind of go into, because in my spending plan, I only spend about, they say around 60%, but mine's probably a little bit less. 50 to 60% is on my essential costs. Okay, those are the things we all have. Then I put the rest of the money I spend, but when I say I spend, I put it in savings accounts for my future, for my retirement, for those unexpected things that happened and unplanned things, for the replacement of things. So those are savings. So I have a lot of money in my savings account. I've kind of allocated it there. I haven't spent it yet, but it is saved for that purpose.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a spending plan is about spending, but that spending word is also can be used as savings, because when I do eventually spend it, it will be for something that I save for.
Yeah.
That I am now benefiting for. And again, you have to have long-term thinking. Yes. And that's what I help people do, is get your head out of the here and now, which most people, when they're in debt and stuff, that's all they can't even see to the next paycheck.
Yeah.
It's let's get yourself out of there and let's show you the long term. And that's what the spending plan does. It shows you even up to 30 years. So you can see where you can be in, any time in the future, what your bank balances will be, when you can achieve the goals. I help people resurrect their dreams that they basically buried because they just didn't think they could achieve them. You can achieve anything in reason.
Yes.
If you have a plan, you have a savings, which is the spending planner helps you with that. You can achieve things and you have time. Over time, we can save for a lot. When I was speaking to the youth last year, there was a young girl in Brisbane. She was 19 and was just getting ready to move into her first home that she got solely on herself. She had a single mother who did not help her. She just started saving when she got her little jobs, and she still had fun, but she had a goal. And she got her first, it was like a $350,000 home in South Brisbane that she got at the age of 19. So I help people say you can do anything you want if you have a plan, and then you stick to that plan. And I always say you have to have the alpaca attitude, just like the barefoot investor. He talks about the alpaca attitude, which is alpacas, when you give them a job to protect, they will do anything, even if a fire comes. They will protect those little lambs, even if they get burnt. Yes. They will stay on their post. And that's what we need to do. Set up your plan and then be like the alpacas and stick to your plan.
Yeah.
And not be like the wind and think, oh, well, I want to impress so-and-so, I'm going to spend this money and go against my plan.
Yeah.
You'll get to the point where you won't say, oh, I can't have that. It will be, I don't choose to have that or spend on that, because you know the peace that keeping to your plan brings you. Yes. So I take people from that stress and they think, oh, you mean I have to give up? No, you're not going to give up anything. Once you get a spending plan and you see what you can achieve, you'll think, why didn't I do it sooner? Because that feeling of seeing money in your accounts, knowing all your bills are covered, when you didn't have to go and get a second and third job to do it, that is the best feeling. And that's what gives me goosebumps and gives the people I work with goosebumps. It's possible for everybody, whether you're a pensioner, someone just starting out their first job as a teenager, or even a retiree. If you are breathing, you need a spending plan.
Now, look, I love that. I love that. As I was listening to you, the word plan just came at me, more times than any word that you've used. And Paul Council, who's my mentor, always said, it's easier to achieve success from a position of freedom than it is to achieve success from incarceration. And you bring up that word plan, because if you don't have a plan, someone else is going to have a plan for you. And that plan will involve, emptying your pockets, getting you to spend your hard-earned cash. Whereas it seems to me that when you have a plan, you work towards something. Because I think you said earlier, having a why, having a date. So on the one hand, if you don't have a plan, people typically will walk their way into creating drama in their lives, and whatever the drama may look like, financially, relationships, stress, we can call it any number of names. But then they do one more thing, which is they go and they justify the things that are not going well. And so that's where all the guilt and the shame and those lower order things. Is that how you see it playing out? Or am I just
Yeah, no, that's correct. So you have to have the dream first.
Yeah.
Then you have to plan and organize how you're going to do that, how you're going to get there. That's where the spending plan does that basically for you. You just put in what your plan is, what your goal is. It will tell you how much you need to put away each week and everything like that. And it's also a virtual plan. Okay. Those of us who know about video games, that people have a virtual life on a video game, and then they have their real life. And so, of course, in their video game, their virtual life, they have a six-pack and, they're just perfect. And then there's their real life.
Yes.
So what we do in the spending plan software is we create your perfect virtual spending year,
I love it.
Perfect thing. We play and get it right in there. We test things out in the plan rather than let's test them out in your actual bank account. Because that's what people do, is they go and buy these big purchases and they get caught up in the moment and they buy something more than they wanted to, especially when it comes to cars. And then they come home and think, oh, where am I going to get that money from? And they even forget that it's going to need repairing and replacing eventually.
Yes.
And so, we put all the stuff and do all the nuts and bolts in the plan. Once we get it perfect, then we mirror what we're doing in the plan with your actual bank accounts.
Yeah. Okay.
So anytime you're going to do any big purchase, go and put it into your plan first and see if it's all going to work. Because there's no reason to make mistakes on a spending choice.
Yes.
If you have a plan. Because it's going to tell you your money truth.
Now, look, I love it. And, I called it the trick to having money is, the trick to money is having some, because most people are so indebted that they've got so much debt that the idea of saving money is just, it even seems absurd. But the reality is that the way most people are living in perpetual debt, to my way of thinking, is crazy. So I want to conclude with it's clear to me that what you provide in the essential spending planner, it sounds to me like you don't do the work for them. They've got to do the work. That's critical. But what it sounds to me like what you've done is you created a blueprint for somebody. They don't have to do any thinking. The blueprint's already been set out, and however challenging their life scenarios might be, this blueprint is going to help them navigate their way out of the financial stress. So how does someone listening to this podcast interview now get in touch with you, having to make that first step? Because the first step is one, I guess you have to acknowledge that you've got some challenges. And then the second step is, how do they get in touch with someone like you to actually help hold their hand through this process? Because there's no shame in that. The thing that you come from a non-judgmental perspective, I think is why I've heard people echo the sentiments of what it is you've done for them. So how does someone get in touch with you directly wanting to start this process?
Yep. So just before I say that, the first thing I do with people is talk to them about effective bank structure.
Yeah.
Because the banks don't give you an effective bank structure. They give you one that makes you not do well with your money so that you go to them for a credit card or loans. And so that's a foundation, is knowing how to manage or categorize your money in bank accounts. And so Essential Spending Planner is my business name. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me Essential Spending Planner on my website. And then my Facebook group, which is really fun, is Happy Spenders Beyond Budgeting. Because yes, budgeting talks about income and expenses, focuses a lot on income. A spending plan, we do have income and expenses, but we focus more on your expenses because, as we found in 2020, that was more important than your income. And that third element of timing. And so we go beyond budgeting in the sense that we add in that missing link of timing of your income and expenses. Yeah. And that's what helps you know that you can 100% pay your expenses in the future. It really works, and it works fast. Yes. Within the first session or two, you will just be blown away and realize, whoa, and see so much clarity. So yeah, that's what I do. So I run 8-week courses. I have a day and a night course once a week, a 90-minute session where I take you through the steps. I have an online course which basically runs you through everything. It's just, and it's great, by the way.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm here to give you old-fashioned service because yes, you've probably read Barefoot Investor. You've probably seen other things, but there are things thrown at you, and you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, not all of us figure it out. And so that's when I'm here, is to help you answer your questions, mentor you, and give you motivation, give you support, and celebrate your wins, whether they be small or big. I'm here to celebrate. I love talking about money, and you will love talking about money. You will get to the point you will love talking about money with your partner, and you will have those financial intimacy dates. Yes. And that will be a positive thing, because money should not be a negative thing in your life. It should be fun. And that's what I do. I bring the fun back into money and get rid of that shame and embarrassment.
Oh, on that note, what else can I say? Ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing that you can control in your financial affairs, it's your spending. If you're in a hole, and I think Cherie will agree with me, the best thing you can do is to stop digging. There's nothing wrong with seeking and getting help, especially from someone who can set you on the straight and narrow. And not only that, but as you've heard from Cherie herself, get you back to doing the very thing that got you into the financial debacle, which is spending too much and spending money on things you don't have. I think the critical distinction with Sherri Dumbrell is that spending money is something that should be enjoyed. She just alluded to it. You heard it from her mouth. But, and this is the big but, you also need to exercise discipline. Spending money is both a joy and a responsibility. I think that's really the underlying takeaway that I've got listening to Cherie. I mean, from the second we started talking, she's brimming from ear to ear. She's excited about money. And that is how I think Cherie and both myself want everybody to feel about money. You cannot have one without the other. And to separate them is to risk getting caught up in the emotions of spending. And Cherie's touched on a lot of those elements. And your emotions can lead you to wreck and ruin. But it doesn't have to end there. Instead, learn to control your emotions and engage in critical thinking, something that Cherie can assist you, and she does phenomenally well, believe you me. And I've read some of the reviews of people who were in tremendous financial, I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars, one person even up to about $100,000. So trust me, if you think that Cherie can't help you, I can assure you she will absolutely flip that on its head. So what we wanted you to do, instead of being addicted to the high of spending, we want you to enjoy spending, but without the guilt and the shame that often accompanies such a natural activity. So from myself and Sherri Dumbrell from Essential Spending Planner, please take care and buy from us.
Thanks for listening to the Money and Time Machine podcast. And remember, you're either someone else's version of a money and time machine, or you can learn how to become your very own effective money and time machine and to live with purpose on purpose.